Today I'm going to walk you through how to make a sign from start to finish. I've already went through and designed this fall sign. It's not 100% complete, but I wanted to show you what I was making before we started making so that it would make a little bit more sense why I'm doing some of the things I'm doing. First thing we want to do is bring this pumpkin into Torchmate. Now I'm going to cover things that I've mentioned or taught you how to do in the last few videos. So you should have more than enough information on how to make this exact sign. We're going to bring the pumpkin in. We're going to go File, Acquire Image, Scan and Trace. Next. Browse Computer. Next. Going to look for the pumpkin. Pumpkin Simple. Next. Remember, we've got to adjust the white threshold. We're going to bring this in until here. Hit next. Remember to leave the current settings on logo, complex with detail. Next. Apply. Remember to hit finish up here at the top. Now that is it for this pumpkin, at least the first little bit. I'm going to move this guy up some. Next, we want to try to make these the right proportions for the size we want to make our sign. So we're going to stretch this guy. You could just click and drag from the corner, but I kind of want to change the width of it versus the whole thing proportionately. I want it to have a certain look to it. Let's put the text in here now. I'll go through on how I got mine to look like this and curve the font. All right, let's do autumn first. So we're going to go up to our text tools, hit that first letter. Click anywhere on the screen, and the font I'm going to be using is this Amarillo. I'm going to type in autumn. Now that I've got that, I'm going to write out skies. Now the font I use for this, I believe, is Orange Blossoms. And I'll do this one in all caps. Next, we're going to do the and symbol. And I used the same font, Amarillo, here for the and symbol. Then pumpkin pies. This one I used Backcountry. All right. Now to wrap our text to fit the curve of this pumpkin, we may have to shrink our font just a little bit so that it'll fit in here. So I'm going to come in and shrink this down some. That looks about the right width of everything. Change skies, make it a smidge smaller. With your letters, you don't really want to go too much smaller than, let's say, 3/4 of an inch, 1/2 inch or so. When they get that much smaller, it starts to run into issues out in the machine when we're cutting and all the little bridges and everything we got to fit in there. I have those about the same size. Bring this guy down. All right, now to get it to curve like this, I'm going to make a shape, an oval, round about there, but I'm going to come in now after I've clicked off and drag my size and proportions around with this oval with the line as my guide of how I want this curved. I'm trying to somewhat match the pumpkin as well. I don't want too big a curve here, but something like that. Now you're going to click the phrase or whatever you're trying to fit the curve to, hold shift, click your shape, transform, and fit text to path. For this one, we're going to run it right through the middle of our line. Hit apply. That curved it just a little bit, and then close. Next, we are going to do the same with the pumpkin lines, or the pumpkin pies. Highlight your letters, hit the outside shape, transform, text to path, and might as well keep it the same. Bottom, and close. All right, now we've got our letters curved to fit our pumpkin. We got to come in here and we can delete the line and move our font into place where we want it. Try to center things up a little bit. While these are still in a text form, what you can do, little trick, is highlight both of them and hit C on your keyboard, and that's going to center up those items. So let's say I had this off over this way, and I highlighted both and hit center. It's going to center both of these guys from each other. And then we could do the same thing with skies and, if we wanted to, but we have to play with this a little bit to get that A not to run into skies. For the skies and I do want those to be the same height, so I'm going to highlight both of them, Alt-K, and remember to select Align to Last Object. We're going to center it top and bottom. It's up and down. Get out of this menu, you just click off there. Now, let's see where it says center is for this, but before we do that, we need to group these together. Now we can hit C to center, and that's got all of these lined up center-wise. Now I am going to group everything together. That way on this pumpkin, I can center it. And when we come in and adjust these lines, we'll know for sure where this is going to be center on the pumpkin. Let's ungroup it, go to layout, ungroup. Now, before we do anything to our text, you should remember we need to convert it to graphics. So text to graphics for all of these. All right. Now each one of these is a graphic instead of a text. Now I want to go in and edit these pumpkin lines just like we have them here, because right now this would be our metal and this area here would be cut out if we left it this way. So I need to come in and be able to edit these lines so that we have this stay metal versus the outside edge being the only thing metal. We're going to break the path, so highlight your image, arrange, break path. Now when I come in and click these inside lines, I can come in and edit this. Now all I did was basically use these lines and shapes and deleted these lines in between them. To do that, to edit any kind of node or lines to anything, you're just going to double left click. That brings up this menu. And I'm going to add a node here by double left clicking again. And when I hold down on the right clicker, I'm going to change this to the plus sign, which gives it the hard corner line. And then I am going to right click again and drag to the two arrows going apart from each other. And that is going to break that line apart. Same thing up here, break that line apart. I'm going to go and do that to all of these little detail lines. Change that, break it. Break it. Change that, then break it. Break it. Now, the reason I'm putting that sharp edge line there before I break it is when we go in and join those two together, I want it to be a sharp line versus a curved line, and that's what the regular round as you can see here, a curved line versus a corner or a straight edge line. Add that there. Then I'm going to break it. All right, got all of them done. I'm going to hit apply. Now I'm going to come in and break that apart. And that'll allow me to come in and delete these in-between lines. I'll show you why I did that here in a second. Oops, deleted one too many. Come back in. Looks like I forgot to break this. Break, apply. Now I've got to break that apart before I can delete this line. All right, finished deleting these. And I did undo by just hitting Control Z. Looks like I missed another one. All right, now I'm gonna go through and delete these. Okay, now that I've got my detailed lines, what I'm gonna do for each one of these, I'm gonna double left click, bring up the nodes again, click and drag and highlight both of those endpoints, and on my keyboard, hit J for join. I'm gonna join that line together. Hit apply. Same thing with this one. Click and drag, hit J, applying. Now, instead of hitting apply every time, you can just bring this pencil over and try to hit the line and click there, and it should transfer that option to edit the nodes over to your next line. All right, now that I've got those all done, I'm going to come in like we did on this example one, and I'm going to break this, but using the weld tool, XOR weld tool. So I'm going to click and drag this guy to line up with that edge as best as I can. All right, and I'm going to hold down Shift, click the outside edge, come over to our weld tools and do the XOR. It's going to ask you, do you want to discard the objects with the same color as the background? Say yes, and that got rid of that extra piece. If when you hit yes or no, it doesn't do what you're looking for that first time, then just undo it and go in and try it again and click no. We have a little hiccup here, so I'm going to double click and delete that extra node there. Hit apply. I'm going to go in and do the rest. You can use your cursors. It might be a little bit easier to get it more exact. Now, some of these lines may be too big. Well, we might have to edit this after I do the XOR weld, so I like both. Double click, and I'm just going to get rid of that one. I'm just clicking and dragging that line to change its curve. Delete that one. It'll be easier. There we go. This is a little too close to that, so I'm just going to delete these end nodes and change it just a little bit so that we don't run too close to that letter. There we go. Maybe shorten this one up a little bit and click and drag, and you can change the angle of that as well. Now, it's not going to always ask you, do you want to get rid of like this window here? It's not going to always bring that up. Like in previous videos, it's just going to do it for you, and then you may have to go in and change or edit whatever the outcome may be. Now we can come in and weld our letters together. You need to click and highlight whatever items we're trying to weld together. Hit your weld tools, and this is just going to be a basic weld. Now, these don't need any welding, just our cursive items do. We're going to go in and finish with some bridges on this sign so that we don't just cut out the silhouettes and we still get these inside details. So I'm going to come over to my shape tools, and I want to create a little rectangle, And the width of this thing shouldn't be any less than 1/8 of an inch. Click off somewhere. Now for this A, I think I want to, yeah, I'm going to try to cut it right through here. That should work. Highlight both items. Actually, before I do that, I'm just going to duplicate this rectangle so that I don't have to keep making them. I'm going to duplicate it first, then click the outside, click the shape, come in here, do the XOR, and now I can come in and delete those extra pieces. I'm going to come in and maybe clean up the edges just a little bit. Try to get this side to match, so stylistically it looks the same. Hit apply. Now for this part of the A, we're going to bring this, like I mentioned in other videos, I like to hide my bridges to one side or the other of the opening versus right down the middle. Just looks a little bit cleaner to me that way. Click both items, get them highlighted, XOR. Oops, and I forgot to duplicate, so I'll save that one. Now we have this between the T and the U. Duplicate that first. Come in and just split those right there-ish, I guess. We want it to still look like a T, so I'm trying to split the difference here. Each font presents its own separate kind of challenges to make it look clean and correct. Now, if I'm going to change the shape of this, I want it to try to match that side, right? But remember, if you're bringing these pieces out so that they look more natural, you're also closing this bridge. So what I would recommend before you set it and move on is bring another bridge back in there as basically a gauge and put it along the edge of one side so that when you come in to make your changes, you know that you're not making this too large and closing that bridge that you just went through and made. So maybe try to get this to try to match that side over here. Hit apply and zoom out, see what it looks like. Move our little gauge. That looks all right. Maybe change a little bit more. All right, so that's the bridging for autumn. Let's come down to our and. Now for our ands and things, shapes like this, I like to try to get it to match. So I'm gonna just bridge this side and this side. Maybe I'll do the bottom. Rotate that. Get it as close as we can. Duplicate that while I've got it. Highlight both. XOR. Oops, Control Z. Now I've got to clean up these lines. It still looks like an and, I guess. Adjust this. Now, since we have two of the same letters, or in the future, if you're doing something that has a whole bunch of the same letters, you don't have to go in and bridge every single one of them. You can highlight the first one you do and duplicate it by hitting Control D. And I'm just going to bring this one over here and use its lines to line this guy up. Then delete the other letter. Save you some time. Now, these are really close together up here at the top, so I'm going to try to space these out just a little bit. I'm going to highlight some, and just with the cursor, get a little bit more space in here. Give me a little bit more space to work with here. Yeah. Make sure I've got at least 1/8 of an inch on one side of this. That looks about right. I do have a little issue here with the S, so I'm just going to slide that out just a little bit so we don't have it cut into each other. Now we need to be able to hang this sign, so I'm going to add 2 holes here for some string, some cute yarn or something like that to attach it to it so we can go in and hang it later once it's cut. I'm going to make just a circle. And for this, I'm just going to make sure that this is an 1/8 inch circle. That's the smallest we're able to make. It's basically just going to pierce this so that we can come in and feed some string through it. I'm going to duplicate that, Control D. All right, I've made both of them. And in order to get these so they're lined up the same height-wise on this pumpkin, I'm going to highlight both of them, Alt-K, and I am going to make sure align to last object is selected, and my up and down, I'm going to hit center. All right, now I know those are the same height, and I can, if I wanted to move them anymore, I could highlight both of them, then click and drag them around. But I think this is ready for our tool paths. Like I mentioned in previous videos, I'm going to highlight this whole job and come in to arrange and connect path. Remember, we need 4 zeros before the 1. Hit OK. Now when we hit Alt S, we can see what our sign looks like. We've got all of our bridges done so that this is not going to fall through. We've got our holes for hanging this. Got our bridges for the P's, the and, just doing a double check. Now I can come in and create my toolpath for this. First, I'm going to bring this down to the bottom left. Before you save any job, we want to make sure it's in the bottom left, and I'll cover that here in a sec once I make a toolpath. So once it's highlighted, come up to Machine, Create Toolpath, Mail, Basic Cut. Always make sure we put 100 on the feed rate, and we've got plasma selected. Okay. This is saying it's kind of small in some areas. Maybe you ought to change the length of stuff. That's because we've got really small mounting holes for the yarn. And some of these letters are somewhat thin. Hopefully these don't cause us grief when we're out there cutting. We'll see. But I'm going to adjust some of these so that they're not so close to the edge, so that the pierce doesn't distort the edge of our cut that we're trying to make look nice and clean. Same thing with these. Come in and double check my lead ins and lead outs. Move that one up this way. We're going to hit apply. Adjust that a little bit. Yeah. This is one of those that was too small, so it didn't create a lead in. It's just going to start somewhere on the lines, which is fine for some of the projects you're doing. Hit apply. All right, so now we've got another interesting issue with this and symbol. You can see because it said that it was too small, it generated two separate tool paths for this and symbol. And what we've got to do is make this look like it's one tool path. So we're just going to click and drag our nodes. We don't have to get them to overlap, but close, because the kerf, remember, is a little bit wider than our line here. That's the material being consumed by the plasma cutter. And once this is cut, that's just going to look like one continuous line. And we'll come down to these letters and go through and do the same editing of the nodes. Now, because this whole job is connected, I can leave it in this window and edit all these lead-ins at once. But it is a good habit of getting into where you click apply each time so that you don't get too far into editing this and it can't keep track or keep up with all of the edits. I've gone through a job and edited all of these before, and once I hit apply, it only did half of them or some of them. So every now and then you want to go in and hit apply. Apply. Now we have our lead in for the outside line, which that looks all right. This one looks okay. Like I mentioned before, we've got to make sure that every job we finish before we save it, it needs to be up against this edge. And when I show you on the actual machine, if we don't save this where that line is on the inside of this line, it's not going to detect it when we go to transfer it into G-code. So I'm going to highlight this again. I'm not going to just click this and move it, because I could just click the tool paths versus the whole job lines. So I'm going to click and drag and hold this down, and you can see it snaps into the corner with those purple lines. Once you get it to snap in the corner, you let go, and now it's within that line. When you go to save your job, you need to have a flash drive plugged into your laptop or your computer before you can save it. That's how you're going to bring it into the shop and cut it out. We're going to go File, Save As, and we're going to name this Autumn. Already got one saved, so Autumn Skies and Pumpkin Pies. Save. It's going to say you want to save over it. I already did this, so I'm going to say yes. All right, the next steps would be coming into the school and plugging it into the machine, and we'll cover that in the last half of this video.